Welcome to the Worldwise Wealth Podcast. I'm your host, Nicole, and this podcast is your guide to building a truly borderless life. From entrepreneurship, investment migration, tax optimization, and everything in between, this show highlights the nuances of a global citizen lifestyle. Let's dive in. As residency processes and investment minimums are becoming more difficult in jurisdictions around the globe, especially in jurisdictions where you may be looking to obtain tax residence without staying there for 6+ months per year. We have had many more clients interested recently in the jurisdiction of Cyprus in order to gain residency, tax residency, and then the non-dom status. So, in the video today, we're going to dive into some details of what this process is like and what is required from you as an individual in order to obtain your residency, tax residency, and then the non dom status in Cyprus. Now, the reason that we have seen more interest in Cyprus in the last 6 to 9 months than ever before is, of course, because they have the non dom tax system, which is a very beneficial no tax scheme that you can take advantage of as either a EU national or a non-EU national. So from any jurisdiction in the world. The nicest part about this for many of our clients is that they do not need to spend more than 60 days per year in Cyprus. Of course, this does come with some other caveats that we're going to dive into when we get to the non-dom and tax residency section of this video. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's first jump into the basics, which is how you can start with just getting your residency in Cyprus. So there are slightly different processes for EU citizens and non-EU citizens. So for EU citizens, of course, you don't need a visa to enter or to stay in Cyprus. Once you arrive in Cyprus within the first 4 months of your arrival, you do need to apply for the yellow slip or the registration certificate in order to obtain residency in the country. Now, this yellow slip does require an address, either rental or an owned address, and proof of employment income and health insurance. So once this is satisfied within those first 4 months and you have gained your residency, you are able then to live and work freely in Cyprus. Now, next up are for non EU citizens, so Canadians, Americans, Australians. If you are looking to obtain your residency in Cyprus, there are two different routes. So the first is temporary residency, which is also known as the pink slip. And this is for financially independent individuals where you have to show a monthly income of around 2,000 to 2,500 euros from abroad. Of course, it cannot be Cyprus sourced, as with any jurisdiction, the income cannot come from that country. And then it's around 500 to 600 euros on average per month per additional dependent on your application. And this is valid for 1 year and is renewable. Now, along with this, for non EU citizens, you also have the permanent residency option, where you have two different options to qualify for permanent residency in Cyprus. The first is that you can buy a property worth at least 300,000 euros plus the VAT, or you can show passive income, and this does have to be long-term stable passive income, such as dividends or property rental income, plus proof of accommodation, of course, in Cyprus. And then with this option, it requires that you stay in Cyprus at least 2 months per year to maintain your permanent residency. So next up, once you have residency, the next step is going to be your tax residency. We do assist clients in this entire process from A to Z, of course, going in the correct order if they are looking for the non-dom status. So if you're interested in learning more, you can book a call with us and the team below. Now, the next option we're going to dive into is tax residency. So you have two options to obtain your tax residency in Cyprus. The first is the 183-day rule. So you have to live in Cyprus for 6 months, 183 days or more per year. And with that, you are automatically granted tax residency. Now, this is pretty standard in most countries. But of course, Cyprus being a potentially tax beneficial, if it's set up in the right way, jurisdiction, they also have another option to obtain tax residency, which is the 60-day rule for a more flexible residency option. So, with this, you have to spend at least 60 days or 2 months per year in Cyprus, and you must maintain a residential address, whether that be renting or owning. Both will suffice, but you do have to have one or the other and have that as your permanent residential address on your application. You do have to have no tax residency elsewhere. So, in any other jurisdiction in the globe, you cannot be triggered as a tax resident. So, this does require somewhat careful planning. Of course, you can choose to stay for 5, 6+ months in Cyprus. You don't have to through this tax residency option. But if you are looking to not obtain tax residency elsewhere, then of course you are a resident. You can stay as long as you would like in Cyprus. And with this option, you also have to either conduct business or be employed or self employed in Cyprus. Through this, you can also be the director of a company, but you do have to either have the business or be an employee or a freelancer of a Cypriot company. Okay, so let's move on. Once these first two steps above are completed and you have qualified, the next step is going to be the non-domicile or non-dom tax resident that Cyprus is very well known for. So you can apply once you are a tax resident of Cyprus, either through the 60-day rule or the 183-day rule, however you choose to qualify for tax residency. Once you hold that tax residency, you can then apply for the non-dom status. It is valid for 17 years from the date that you have become a Cyprus tax resident. So this is important to note. It's not something that is lifelong, but it does have a pretty good shelf life of 17 years. Some of the benefits of the non-dom tax status are, of course, 0% tax on dividend, interest, and rental income from abroad. It's really more ideal for investors who hold passive income, not for those who have active income. Some of the other benefits, of course, are no wealth tax, no inheritance tax, and no gift tax. So, for the right individual, this can be a very lucrative setup. And of course, you are based in Europe. So, going into some other benefits, of course, we're going to talk about setting up a company in Cyprus. While this is not necessarily going to be required for the residency or tax residency, it may still be beneficial for you to set up a company in Cyprus if you run a business or provide services. If you want to pay the 12.5% corporate tax instead of the personal income tax of up to 35%. So, this is a specific strategy. Of course, if you have your own business, then you can qualify for that 12.5% corporate tax instead of it going all the way up to the 35% at the individual level. And you can plan to take dividends, which are, of course, tax free for non dom residents. What this setup typically looks like for our clients is you form a company in Cyprus, you appoint yourself as the director, and then you pay yourself dividends instead of the salary. So that is a 0% personal tax as a non dom tax resident in Cyprus. Okay, so there's a lot more we could cover here, but the last point I'm going to cover, which we always talk about in the preliminary sessions with our clients, is banking. Now, traditional banks in Cyprus are somewhat stricter and more rigid, as traditional banks are in most jurisdictions around the globe for opening accounts. It's not impossible, and we do assist with this. But if you are a resident of a European Union country, such as Cyprus, you can bank and also hold crypto in any EU jurisdiction. So it does not have to be a bank, an investment brokerage, or an exchange for crypto that is specific to Cyprus. It can be a bank account, a crypto account that is registered anywhere in the EU. So that is a nice aspect of Cyprus in terms of banking. But I will note for this, you're typically looking at fintech banking options specifically for banking, as most traditional banks will want you to be a resident in that country's jurisdiction in order to open a traditional bank. If you're interested in learning more about opening a company in Cyprus, becoming a resident, tax resident, and gaining that non dom status, you can book a call with us below where we can go through based on your specific situation and business or family life if Cyprus is going to be a jurisdiction that would make sense for you and your business in the long term, or if there are some other beneficial jurisdictions that may work better for you from a holistic perspective. You've just listened to the World Wise Wealth podcast. Visit our links in the show notes below or at worldwisecapital.com to learn more about how we can assist in your borderless diversification journey. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in the next episode.